And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquaba, and welcome. Welcome to another round of the Conscious Roster Report here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, here on livinginblack.com. My name is Keedy Awadu, aka The Conscious Roster. Weekday mornings, you and I get here live. We come at you from 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's 12 noon Eastern Time, 5 p.m. GMT, and 8 p.m. East Africa Time. We get together and we deal with culture, consciousness, historical perspectives, entertainment, economics, education, health, labor, law, politics, religion, family, conflict, future studies, Pan-African affairs, sustainable development, all areas of human interactivity and development. Today's date is Tuesday. It is the 25th of February. The year 2025 in the Western calendar. This corresponds to the year 6265 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we have realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the 7th millennium. You have found your family in a peaceful place or on LIB Radio, LIB TV here on livinginblack.com. Let me take you into today's program, and it's been quite a busy morning as I am fitting to wrap up the writing, the research, and the writing going into the book entitled The African Future, and the subtitle Empowering a United and Prosperous Africa for Future Generations. And that's what that's all about. And I'm excited. I hope you are in turn excited about what this whole research program, research project has been about. I welcome you, our listening audience, to participate in the conversation to the best of our abilities. This is a collective. This is a collective affair. We're all in this together. As Al Jarreau sang, we're in this love together. That's what I'm talking about. So let's go on. Let's go forward. I have on here, let me give you the description of today's program. Moving from Africa Rising to the African Future. Today on LIB Radio, a decade ago, and here, wait a minute, where are we at? Where are we at? This thing is showing me a bunch of commercials. This is all new on Rumble. I hope that's not the new trend to have to go through the program in real time and knock the commercials out of the way. It's not doing that to my You Now family. Great to have you in the house today. We're broadcasting, simulcasting on Rumble, You Now, Facebook Live Video, the TuneIn app via LIB Radio on the TuneIn app, as well as today we are live on YouTube. So hopefully we will have a beautiful, sizable audience for today. And our audience will be engaging on whatever platform you are on. I do see Nguvu in the house. Hotep, my brother, will have to listen to most of the show today, but could you talk more about the land given to Americans to build houses, towns, etc.? We have talked about that. I talked about just a few days ago. There are multiple projects. I got a note from one of my colleagues based in London, and London is undeniably one of the most pan-African cities in the world for many reasons. But I got a call that a Nigerian brother that he was in contact with was being offered 100,000 hectares of land upon which to grow an agricultural project, for which he was at the time reading my book, The Blackest Soil, Africa Can Feed the World. And so this is the third time that I've heard from Nigerians and that book, and they've been reaching out, wanting to work closely with your brother. I have been offered land for such projects in Ghana, Uganda, Kenya, Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and not necessarily offered land, but collaborative partnership in South Africa as well. So And so these land offerings, these land grants are coming from Ghana. There was the Fihankra project offered 20, 30 years ago, which has, from my latest impression, the Fihankra project has largely collapsed. They did actually get it started, and they were building houses and people relocating there. But unfortunately, a tragic incident where two black women from the U.S. were murdered on the land over leadership and land and wealth disputes. That project was withdrawn. There is a similar project that Dr. Arikana Chimboro had brought to our attention of a land offering or a land collaborative partnership to build a Wakanda village in the Gold Coast region of Ghana. And similarly, another offer of over 5,000 acres on the Zambia-Zimbabwe border. Dr. Chimboro Kwao is from Zimbabwe, so she was able to get those governments to commit over 5,000 acres of land on the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe. From my understanding, that project was still waiting for African Americans to commit the resources. And the most recent one, an offer of 10,000 acre project, is attempting to sell plots. And the plots are not cheap to Africans from the diaspora to relocate to a pretty much diaspora peopled community in Ghana. So they do exist. They are real. The key about it is what are we bringing to the table? They want us to bring investment and capital. They want us to bring intellectual power, experience, technology transfer, technology expertise. They want us to bring something serious to the table. So here's the thing on Google, and I'll wrap it up with this. If you want to relocate to the African continent, offers are open. Sierra Leone, offers are open. Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, numerous locations. Tanzania, very easy for us to relocate. The key about it is why? Why do we want to go? What are we offering in return? Do we offer capital, development capital? That's what the latest offer from Ghana is about. They want us to buy these plots so they can develop this large community and build the houses and build the infrastructure, urbanized infrastructure. So we're going to be touching on some of that today. Today, a decade ago, I was initially alerted and attracted to the Africa Rising narrative. In early 2015, I dedicated an entire month of this daily webcast to themes that validated my excitement about what was being reported from the motherland. I discovered that powerful institutions, universities, think tanks, and economics reporting agencies have posited numerous reports on the phenomena we now know as Africa Rising. However, the mainstream media that many of the global African community tuned into was either unaware of these transitions or was otherwise withholding this narrative from our larger population. Africa Rising was the biggest kept secret happening in the realm of global economic growth and industrial productivity. So that is the theme that we're going to be talking about today, not just uncovering and validating this theme called Africa Rising. I've done that so many times, hundreds of times, but also to talk about this, putting this into the context of moving from Africa Rising to the African future. That's the new narrative. That's the next generation of this narrative. And we should be really quite excited about this transformation from from Africa Rising to the African future. That's what the new book is all about. And Google says, thanks, I'm interested. And you can text me off, or text me when I'm off the air, text me and see if you might want to join a collective making this happen. Now, we don't need passive participants. We have plenty of people who just passively want to say, yeah, I'm down with that, and then they don't bring anything to the table. We don't need any more passive seats. We need people capable of driving this starship, of helping tangibly, materially, technologically, technically, skills, resources. Whole lot of seats need to be filled on this steamship. Going forward, I have a whole lot of research that I pulled together today. I'm going to first of all go to the book because I've been writing feverishly since yesterday's program ended and doing my best to shape up this chapter. The book is getting close to being finished. I'm looking right now. The book is 165 pages, probably about 170 pages long. And when you include the index, getting close to 200 pages for the book. So it's going to be a sizable book. And going to the beginning of this chapter is simply called Economic Development. I began with this quote, two quotes on what's happening in Africa. And the last day or so, I went to my bookshelf and I pulled off a whole stack of books. The Falsification of African Consciousness from Dr. Amos Wilson. Black Skin, White Masks by Frantz Fanon. Africa Rising by Vijay Mahajan. Pulled off books like this excellent book, China's Second Continent by Howard French, how 1 million migrants are building a new empire in Africa. And we, million migrants, could do the same thing if we would just follow some strategic plan. I pulled off the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey, or Africa for the Africans. I pulled off the shelf Wangari Maathai's The Challenge for Africa, one of my favorite human beings and authors. Pulled off Race First by Dr. Tony Martin, praise be his eternal name. I pulled off Innovation and Its Enemies by Dr. Callistus Juma, praise be his eternal name. I have a whole row stack over here of books related to these themes and topics that are going into the book that I'm currently writing. So, two quotes I began. Number one comes from the World Economic Forum. Yeah, Klaus Schwab and the dogs of global conquest. They wrote, and I quote, Africa is the next frontier for economic growth, and it is essential to invest in its people and infrastructure to harness this potential. From the World Economic Forum reports, and secondly, from reports from the McKinsey Global Institute. One of the first places that I went to confirm this phenomena called Africa Rising was McKinsey Global Institute, and they wrote, the African youth are the driving force behind the continent's growth, bringing innovation and entrepreneurship that can transform economies. Here's what I am writing. First subchapter, Innovation, Harvesting Technology and Energy Solutions. This first paragraph, I'll reread just part of it. Much of it was the introduction to today's show. A decade ago, I was initially alerted and attracted to the Africa Rising narrative. In early 2015, I dedicated an entire month of my daily webcast to themes that validated my excitement about what was being reported from the motherland. I'll read it all. It's just brief. I discovered that powerful institutions, universities, think tanks, and economics reporting agencies have posited numerous reports on the phenomena. However, the mainstream media that many of the global African community tuned into was either unaware of these transitions or was otherwise withholding this narrative from the larger population. Africa Rising was the biggest kept secret happening in the realm of global economic growth and industrial productivity. Much of what was driving, and I will say this further, even among my extended group of Pan-African colleagues, they didn't know what was happening. They had never heard of those two words together. And even to this day, I still find my Pan-African black nationalist colleagues have never heard the two words Africa rising in the context of this narrative that I'm describing today. Now I am saying, after 10 years of my focus on Africa rising, I am forcing the transformation, the transition from the Africa rising narrative to the African future. The African future is a deliberate strategic pathway. It is a self-determined trajectory to move us to the African future. The South Koreans did it. The Vietnamese are doing it. The Japanese did it. The Chinese did it. India did it. These other formerly colonized parts of the country, of the planet, they forced this transformation. We're going to talk more about that today. Much of what was driving this rapid transformation was related to the very same growth engines that had given Western and more developed nations their empowering industrial advantages. Two key factors, technological innovation and widespread availability of affordable energy, were constant in the examples of rapidly growing economies. These two factors had largely bypassed or were being withheld from Africa's post-colonial development. This brief data set points on electrification rates, comparing the much touted Asian tigers, quote unquote, with their rapid economic growth to newly decolonized Africa during the same periods, clearly illustrating the impact of technical innovation and available energy within the regions. The electrification rates in the Asian tiger economies, Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan, and African nations have shown significant divergence over the decades. And I should say, instead of and versus, African rates have shown significant divergence over the decades. Asian tiger economies, 1960s. Electrification rates were relatively low as these economies were still developing. Predictably, specific data for this period is scarce. 1980s. By the 1980s, the Asian tigers had made substantial progress. South Korea, for example, had achieved nearly universal electrification. The 2000s. By the 2000s, all four Asian tiger economies had achieved nearly 100% electrification. And that reference comes from a Wikipedia article for Asian tigers. African nations, 1960s. Electrification rates in African nations were extremely low, with many countries having less than 10% of households connected to electricity. The 1980s. By the 1980s, the average electrification rate in sub-Saharan Africa was still around 28%. 2000s. By the 2000s, the electrification rate had improved but remained low compared to the Asian tigers. For example, in 2008, the electrification rate in Africa was around 66%, with significant disparities between urban and rural areas. Thus, we can conclude that the Asian tiger economies' rapid progression in electrification facilitated their swift industrialization and economic growth. At the same time, African nations have faced more significant challenges in achieving similar rates of electrification, which has resulted in innovation as which has resulted in significant deficits in innovation and GDP growth. But that is all changing, which is why we're moving this narrative about Africa rising to the African future. It's all changing. I'm going to get to these GDP growth rates here very shortly. Economic growth, the next subchapter, connecting African trade and development. Expanding our dialogue from the Africa rising narrative to the real development of the African future, several trends have clearly defined this massive transformation. The following are 12 trends, among many, that confirm the foundation for the Africa rising narrative and signal great progress for the African future. Point number 1, economic growth. Many African countries have experienced significant economic growth over the past 2 decades, with some nations achieving annual GDP growth rates of over 5%. Despite recent challenges, many African economies continue to grow at rates higher than the global average, with 5 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies located in Africa. And that statement, with 5 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies, when I saw that statement, it immediately signaled to me that's probably not true. So what I did was I went to search for the fastest growing economies in the world. And I did find what I was looking for. Now I got to find it on my desktop. Here's the inquiry I asked of the Brave AI search engine. Of the world's 35 fastest growing economies in annual GDP, how many of them are African nations? Name them. And it came back with an answer. African economies among the fastest growers. According to the latest estimates, 22 of the world's 35 fastest growing economies in annual GDP growth are African nations. And let me copy, cut, and paste that and replace that in the one that I didn't like, which was from another AI search engine. Paste this in here. Let me reread that section again. Despite recent challenges, many African economies continue to grow at rates higher than the global average. According to the latest estimates, 22 of the world's 35 fastest growing economies in annual GDP are African nations. And what I need to do is there are certain references listed here, and I specifically use, and I'm going to find it right now for you, I use this specific reference from Wikipedia. And let me find this. And I pulled a whole bunch of research for today. And where did I put that particular reference? And it's probably at the top. Here it is. Here's what I have. I pulled it today. Confirm it. According to the latest estimates, 22 of the world's 35 fastest growing economies in annual GDP growth are African nations. They are Niger, expected to grow at a rate of over 7% per year. Now, this is comparing to Western nations like UK, USA, and France, and Germany, where the GDP growth is confined to, at best, between 2% and 2.8%. So Niger, expected to grow at over 7% per year. Senegal, over 7% per year. Libya, over 7% per year. Rwanda, over 7% per year. The DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo, among the top 5 performing countries in the world. Cote d'Ivoire, among the top performing countries. Sao Tome and Principe, real GDP growth rate of 2.9%. South Sudan, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, Morocco, Angola, Kenya, Algeria, Egypt, Ghana, Cameroon, Tunisia, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Sudan, all of which these 22 nations are among the 35 fastest growing economies in the world. We're talking about 12 trends that confirm the foundation for the Africa Rising narrative and signal great progress for the African future. Trend number 2, urbanization. Rapid urbanization is transforming African cities into economic hubs, attracting investment and creating jobs. Africa is urbanizing faster than any other region, with its urban population growing at a rate of 3.7% annually since 2000, compared to overall population growth of 2.5%. Point number 3, energy access. Initiatives like Mission 300 aim to connect 300 million people to electricity in sub-Saharan Africa by 2030. And the U.S.-supported Power Africa program, and that was actually Power Africa Initiative, was the actual title of it, are enhancing economic opportunities and quality of life for those lacking adequate electrification. Point number 4, technological advancements. The rise of mobile technology and internet penetration has revolutionized communication, commerce, and access to information across the continent. Very, very important. And have revolutionized communication, commerce. They're using it also for financial transaction, consumer transaction, let's say that, consumer transactions, and access to information across the continent. Yes, yes, yes. Africa leapfrogging with communications. Number 5, digital transformation. The World Bank is supporting digital transformation initiatives across Africa, aiming to boost economic growth, innovation, job creation, and inclusion. And the World Bank, and I should say many other initiatives, because the World Bank does not give them credit for Africa's transformation, and many other institutions are supporting digital transformation initiatives across Africa, aiming to boost economic growth, innovation, job creation, and inclusion. Point 6, improved governance. There has been a notable improvement in governance and political stability in several African countries, leading to better policy implementation and economic management. And we have this wonderful example of Ibrahim Traore. Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso is a brilliant example of this new leadership. Maybe I can do a profile of some of these young leaders in the book, or maybe I've done that already in other parts of the book. Number 7, We're talking about these trends that confirm the existence of Africa rising and are pushing to the new narrative of the African future. Number 7, youth population and human capital development. Africa's youthful population is seen as a demographic dividend, with a growing number of young people entering the workforce and driving innovation. And this is a very important point. This thing called the demographic dividend, we've talked about that numerous times. I've been talking about demographics since the early 1990s. A lot of people still haven't caught on to what this really means, but we better be paying attention, because I can assure you all of those around the world competing for African consumer markets, for African natural resources, competing to who's going to supply pharmaceuticals for this burgeoning population of African young people, who's going to be providing jobs for them. Everyone around the world knows about Africa's dynamics of demographics. Unfortunately, African American leadership and much of the leadership of Africans across the diaspora, including UK, France, Canada, and across CARICOM, are unaware of the importance of demographics. Programs like the Africa Human Capital Plan and the East African Girls Empowerment and Resilience Program are accelerating progress in education and empowerment. Very, very important. The Africa Human Capital Plan and the East Africa Girls Empowerment and Resilience Program, among many other programs serving the younger population. Number 8, infrastructure development. Significant investments in infrastructure, including transportation, energy, and telecommunications, are enhancing connectivity and boosting economic activities. Number 9, increase regional integration. Efforts to enhance regional integration and cooperation, such as the Horn of Africa Initiative, the East African Federation, (2027), the Confederation of Sahel States, and others, and regional RECs. Again, increase regional integration. Efforts to enhance regional integration and cooperation, such as the Horn of Africa Initiative, the East African Federation 2027, the Confederation of Sahel States, and RECs, regional economic communities, are being supported by major financial institutions and international organizations, and by being supported by good governance. Major financial institutions and international organizations. Going forward, just a couple little typos here. Correct it while I'm on it, and that way I don't have to come and do it again. Number 10, improved agricultural productivity. The agricultural sector, which employs 49% of the continent's workforce, has seen steady improvements in productivity and output over the past 2 decades. Number 11, increased foreign investment. Africa has become an attractive destination for foreign direct investment, FDI, with investors recognizing the continent's potential for growth and development. And this is what I keep telling Africans in the United States and across the diaspora. Those who listen to the program, you know, I'm always talking about the critical need for foreign direct investment, for us to become partners with our continental development. We're going to do better, but as of right now, we're just not doing well enough. and others are very aggressive about getting into place. Part of the reason they're so aggressive about it is because they know that we represent a sleeping tiger. And if we don't participate, we just get left behind. We just get left behind. So going forward, and for you in Google, I just put up my text number in the chat in case you do want to reach me. I do see Karsten is in the house on our You Now family. Z to the E is in the house. Great to have you with us. You are greatly appreciated in this family. Here we go. Continuing, we're talking about these 12 distinct advantages, confirming Africa Rising and implementing the African future. Number 12, vastly improving education. African governments are investing in system-level components to build resilience into the foundation of their educational systems and sustained the capabilities and motivations of key stakeholders, particularly teachers. This investment is crucial for adapting to future challenges and ensuring that all children, regardless of background, have access to quality education. And then they talked about the foundations of key stakeholders, particularly teachers, and I would say also digitize remote learning infrastructure. Very important. To do digital remote learning, you have to have electrification, you have to have access to internet. All very important parts of infrastructure. So these trends and many more collectively contribute to the optimistic narrative of Africa's rising future. And let's go forward. The next section of the book, Quotable Moments from Davos 2014. And I have a whole lot of these quotable moments. Let me just see where I'm at because I'm on two different documents here, one of which are my notes, and then there is the actual book. I prefer to read from the book, but some of this is a little bit raw. And here we go. We got quotable documents. The Africa Rising narrative highlights the economic growth, cultural dynamism, and potential of the African continent. Here are a few quotes that reflect this perspective. The first quote, and I don't have a source for it, is quote, Africa is not a country. It's a continent of 54 countries, 55 now, each with its own unique culture, language, and history. The narrative of Africa Rising is about recognizing the diversity and potential of these nations. Various interviews and analyses have been on this topic. The second quote, the future of Africa is bright, and the continent is poised to become a major player in the global economy. And I don't have a source for that one either. So these are from my raw notes. Those did not make it into the book because they lacked source. I do have other sources, such as this one from this same collection. I got this from McKinsey Global Institute, and I used this to open up the chapter. Africa is the next frontier for economic growth, and it is essential to invest in its people and infrastructure to harness this potential. That one from the World Economic Forum reports, and then I attached the two of them here together so I can copy, cut, and paste them to the book. The African youth are the driving force behind the continent's growth, bringing innovation and entrepreneurship that can transform economies. That one from McKinsey Global Institute. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to the book because I filtered dozens and dozens of these quotes about this transformation. And here's where they now sit in the book. Quotable moments from Davos 2014. That's the World Economic Forum's annual meeting from 2014. So this is a year before I discovered the Africa Rising narrative. This is what I stumbled into. This quote from President John Mahama from Ghana, who was in 2014 president of Ghana. He has now been reelected and is in 2025 the current newly inaugurated president of the Republic of Ghana. In 2014, he said the following: "We are enjoying in Africa what I call the democracy dividend. The progress we are seeing, economic development, are all part of the dividend of good governance, respect for human rights, rule of law. It has created an enabling environment that allows not only foreigners to come in and invest, but for Ghanaians to invest. It has created an atmosphere for our young people to be creative, innovative." That from President John Mahama, Ghana. The next quote on this list from President Goodluck Jonathan, Nigeria, again from 2014. "Majority of the African countries are now enjoying stable governance. Before you talk about economic growth, political stability is key." President Goodluck Jonathan, Nigeria. Next quote from Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the president of the Republic of Liberia. She wrote, and I quote, or she spoke at the Davos conference, "There is no easy fix for youth unemployment. Partnership between the public and private sectors can make a big difference." Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, president of Liberia. Next quote from Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. That's not so hard. It's Nigerian, so the syllables separate. Not syllables. Yeah, syllables separate. She spoke, "The idea, the government's You Win campaign, is that instead of young people in Nigeria waiting to get employment, they should create their own jobs and employ their peers and employ other people." From Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Financial Minister and Coordinating Minister of Nigeria. Next quote from Mohamed Duji. "I have a dream that Africa should have one block, north to south. We could trade freely. People can move freely, and that makes business sense." From Mohamed Duji, Group Chief Executive Officer of Mohammed Enterprises, Tanzania. And his vision, his dream in 2014 became a reality in 2021 with the implementation of the world's largest free trade area, the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, is now the reality that's being built. It's not going to be built in a day. It will probably take a decade, maybe a decade and a half to fully implement this strategic plan. But it is a major, major game changer that all of us should know about. Are you in the house today? Somebody in the house? Please talk to me. Let me know that you appreciate what we're talking about, what we're doing here on LIB Radio. And excuse me, I had to reposition my camera. I'm excited. This stuff gets me energized. If you're talking to me, I'm going to know about it. Talk to me today, people. It's important that we collaborate, cooperate. Just double checking to see who is talking to me. Nobody is right now. But you're in the house. I do have a substantial size audience, but Only one other person other than myself has hit the like button on the Rumble broadcast. That's not good. Can we do better than that? I think we can, but I got to see evidence. I am a evidence-based data analyst. So come on, let's participate. Let's collaborate. Let's cooperate. Going forward, reading from the book, Dr. Ahmed Haykal, chairman of Citadel Capital. Africa is the story. The big story is Africa. The Chinese and Japanese are now fighting over Africa. This is a market of 1 billion people of natural resources. Dr. Ahmed Haykal, and he's saying this in 2014, the continent of 1 billion people is now a continent of 1.545 billion Africans. I think that's the number for today. Let me look it up because I love double checking this number from Worldometer, WORLDO meter, Africa, and pulling that up, Worldometer, but up the population of Africa, 2025, in real time, 1.537 billion Africans, 1.538. So I said 1.54. I was very, very close. I was right on time. Today, right now, baby born, 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 born. More than one baby born per second in the African. Isn't it? Next from Doreen E. Noni from Escado Bird. We can only get our continent to have inclusive growth if we are educated and change our mindset. That's why I'm doing the show today. To educate, to change mindsets, to inform, inspire, and excite us about this gift that's been given to our generation. The Ma'afa is over. If we choose to call an end to the great suffering of enslavement, the Ma'afa is over. Now it's time to get to work to build out that which the Creator and Providence has placed in our hands. What's in your hands? What's in your hands? Said Adam Clayton Powell. Black people, you can build, you can grow. What is in your hands? What tools are you using? What research are you using? What is your highest priority? Is it celebrity worship? Is it pop a balloon and find love? What is in your hands? Build. There's no reason for us to delay any longer. This is the gift of 20 generations and more. What's in your hands? Going forward, that last quote from Doreen E. Noni, creative director from Escado Bird. She said, we can only get our continent to have inclusive growth if we're educated and change our mindsets. Next quote from Julian Roberts, Group Chief Executive, Old Mutual, wrote, he said, these are all spoken quotes. They were at the Davos conference. We wouldn't be investing as much in the rest of Africa if we didn't believe Africa will be the success story in the next decades. Africa is on the move, and it is moving forward. Yes, Africa rising. Again, these quotes come from the Davos conference the year before I discovered Africa Rising narrative. And they are all confirming the Africa Rising narrative. And once I discovered it, I'm doing everything I can. I'm telling everybody, friend and foe. I got it. The foe's going to hear it because the foes tune in more to what this challenges them, their hegemony. But for the friends, sometimes I wonder if all of this effort to inform them is even worth the self-sacrifices that I have made Time will tell, but I know one thing. I'm not going to waste my generation talking about post-enslavement trauma syndrome, talking about white supremacy. I'm not going to waste my contribution to 21 generations of the Ma'afa. Mm-mm. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to waste your time. Next quote. We need a race to the top so that we have policies and regulations that protect human rights, the environment, and that reduce poverty. That's from Winnie Byanyima, Executive Director of Oxfam International. Yeah, I'm not a fan of Oxfam, but I do agree. We need a race to the top so that we can have policies and regulations that protect human rights, the environment, and reduce poverty. I think I'll probably remove that one because when we talk about Oxfam's efforts in Africa, and they're talking about human rights that only sees that as a subject for targeting African leaders. When they talk about the environment, they are talking about they are the ones most qualified to protect African environment. And I don't cuss, but I say heck to that. I don't cuss. And then when they talk about reduce poverty, that's fake talk. They're lying. They're talking out the side. They say, and reduce poverty. So I'm going to delete that whole paragraph. And sorry, Winnie Byanyima, probably a beautiful African woman, but sorry, but we just do not trust your sponsors. So that one gone. I'm deleting that. Next quote from Ina Moholo, Governor and Chairman of the Board of the Bank of Botswana. Quote, target small and medium-sized enterprises, and you target women because that is where they access the business sector. And that is true. SMEs are the greatest employer in African nations as there are in the developed nations. SMEs, the greatest employers. And yes, it is true that across the SME spectrum of enterprises, women have a solid basis, solid foundation for contributing to national economy. And we can only salute that success and do everything we can to make sure that that success continues for the benefit of shifting the Africa Rising narrative to the African future. SME growth. Yes, yes, yes. Quote from Cardinal Turkson, quote, long-term vision requires the patience to invest in the future. I like that, even though it's coming from a cardinal who's probably affiliated with a religion that I personally don't like its position in Africa's cultural development. But it's a very true statement, no matter where it comes from. Long-term vision requires the patience to invest in the future. And some of us do exercise that. And some of us do show that patience, for which I am and we are eternally grateful. Eternally grateful. Yes, we are. So 1 second here. I'm going to just do some check on something in the background just to make sure we are on target, we're on point. And to those of you across our listening audience, I'm going to just take a moment here and ask, can I convince you to invest in this future? The book is coming out, The African Future. I guess I could go ahead and put up a link to pre-purchase the book. It's just a couple of days away from being sent to the printer. I could send it to the printer right now, but there's still some powerful ideas that go into this book, The African Future. But I need help, people. As it is right now, Even if I send it to the printer, I won't even be able to afford a copy of it myself until I can somehow, some way convince somebody to help out a little bit. If everybody did just a little bit, everybody bought one book from Kitty.biz, if all of you just listening just today bought one book, that would help me to move forward strategically on several levels. I say this quite frequently, yet the majority of people just do not show up and are probably not going to change. As it is right now, that is resulting in the phenomena documented in the book called fade to black, the passing of a great race. Fade to black means fading out. That means at the end of the play, the end of the curtain, the end of whatever the musical, they fade to black. The lights go down, go dim, and it's done. The party's over. Fade to black. We can do better than that, but not if we don't do better. Long-term vision requires the patience and the vision to invest in the future. And the last quote on this list, Africa's risks are mainly perceived and not real. Unfortunately for us in Africa, we are not really very good at telling our own story. But things are changing, and people are beginning to understand that things are going very, very well. That quote from Aliko Dangote, the wealthiest African in the world, the Nigerian Aliko Dangote. I'm going to reread that. Africa's risks are mainly perceived and not real. Unfortunately for us in Africa, we are not really very good at telling our own story. But things are changing, and people are beginning to understand that things are going very, very well. Aliko Dangote. And Baba, I accept that challenge of being personally able to tell our own story. There's an old Kenyan proverb that says, until the lion learns to write, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. The hunters are the Arabs, are the European Union, US, Canada. The hunters are the Russians and the Chinese and the South Koreans, the Japanese, the Singaporeans. The hunters are the Malaysians, the Indians, the Arabs. They are all hunting for the resource basin that will empower the planet's wealth development for the next 500 years and beyond. And the hunted is our African motherland, our continent, our homeland, and its people, its children, its natural resources, minerals, hydrocarbon resources, its rare earth minerals, its wildlife, fauna and flora, its medicinal herbs. All of that is the prey. Are we defenders? Or are we the fastest moving that can capture much of these resources before the prey, the hunters, the vampires, the vultures, the flesh-eating predators can get to Africa? That's a serious question, people. A serious question for which it looks like our people just are not prepared or preparing to answer these questions. And so we find ourselves in this position, in this dilemma, standing on the verge of getting it on. Going forward, next chapter of the book, and let me double check, see if I got some listeners. When I on a roll like today, it's really kind of shameful that I should be carrying this burden alone and other people aren't helping out. But yeah, I'm looking right now, nobody's talking to me. Nobody's talking to me. We're going to do better, or we're going to perish. Dr. Amos Ma'at talks about Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology admissions. He put up a link to that, and that is the place where we, in 2010, We took a low power FM radio station, broadcaster, microphones, headphones, mic stands, the tuner, antenna. We donated all of that. It was about a $17,000 donation. We donated all of that to the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Some of the technology went into some other groups that were producing audio as well. But really proud of that. So thank you, Brother Amasis. He put in a link to where admissions, I guess, if you want to apply to Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, I think that we should take up on that. So here's a link that Brother Amasis shared. Thank you, dear Brother Amasis, for doing all that you do. And he is on my Inner Circle team. We're to be traveling to Ghana together the next time I go. Kwame Nkrumah University. So there is that link. And hopefully, somebody will say, hey, listen, that sounds like something I might want to participate in. Going forward, here we are, where we is. Back to the book I'm reading from, The African Future. The next subchapter, Building African Food Value Chains. Again, this chapter is on African economics or economic development. Building African Food Value Chains. In the book, The Blackest Soil Africa Can Feed the World, I introduced the following 10-point food value chain construct. These 10 points are, these 10 inputs are, number 1, finance, farming loans to support the planting season. Number 2, human resources, human intelligence in the form of R&D, research and development, farm labor, and facilities to support workers. Point 3, agri-tech, technology and machinery to support planting, irrigation, and harvesting. Number 4, harvesting, aggregating and storing the annual harvests. Number 5, transport infrastructure, transportation and refrigeration to get products to market, to production and market, before they spoil. Number 6, industrial manufacturing, primary and secondary food processing and production facilities. This is the 10-point food value chain. Number 7, packaging, manufacturing of packaging materials. Number 8, distribution, regional distribution facilities. Number 9, markets, wholesale and retail markets, including farmers markets. And number 10, consumers, consumers from farm to plate. This is the end of the food value chain processes. Building African nations' food value chains involves several critical steps to ensure sustainable and resilient food systems. These steps include improving infrastructure, enhancing governance, and fostering regional integration. Key points are, key inputs are, number 1, improve infrastructure development. Enhancing infrastructure is crucial for efficient food value chains. This includes improving roads, rail, and harbor facilities to reduce transportation costs and increase market access for farmers. For instance, poor road and rail infrastructure can add up to 40% to the cost of goods traded among African countries. Point two, governance and policy changes. Strengthening governance structures and implementing supportive policies are essential. This involves creating strong linkages within the food value chain, such as farmers providing produce to food companies through contracts and fostering cooperative organization among farmers. Point three, regional integration. Promoting regional integration through initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, can enhance food security and resilience. The AFCFTA aims to boost intra-African trade, which is currently below 20%, and reduce dependency on external food imports. Point four, investment in research and development. Investing in R&D for African agricultural production and increasing food safety will help to increase yields and improve production. This includes leveraging existing capabilities or capacities and penetrating the growing biofertilizer market. R&D into organic food production techniques will help African farmers to become leaders in the global food marketplace. That's true. Going forward, access to finance. In the list that I put in the Blackest Soil, that was the first thing, access to finance for financing the coming growing season. Number 5 on this list, access to finance. Providing access to finance is crucial for undertaking necessary investments in the food value chain. This includes supporting smallholder farmers and agribusinesses with financial services and products. Capacity building. Building capacities for the design of agricultural sector strategies and evidence-based policy reforms is vital. Initiatives like the Regional Food Balance Sheet, RFBS, and the ECOWAS Rice Observatory, ERO, aim to address data gaps and guide food and nutrition-related decision-making. Number 7, climate resilience. Investing in developing African scientists and research institutions to improve climate resilience is essential. This adaptation includes training national research system breeders to create local capacity for genetic development, but also solving long withstood problems like drought and flooding. Like not only drought and flooding, along with pests, what's the word? Plagues of locusts and other pests. There's a lot of challenge there. And to do it, they did talking about genetic development. I'm going to say for genetic integrity and protection. Genetic integrity and protection. Because I'm not into the genetic editing, bioediting, GMO, genetic modified. I'm not into that. And I don't think that we based upon our own experience with these policies and strategies in the West, I don't think we should go along with that for the African future. We can do better than that. We can do better than that. Again, I'm going to reread that. Number 7, climate resilience, because I did alter it. Investing in developing African scientists and research institutions to improve climate resilience is essential. These adaptations include training national research system breeders to create local capacity for genetic integrity and protection, and solving not long-winded problems, long-standing, it should say, long-standing problems like drought and flooding, along with plagues of locusts and other pests. Very, very important. So, going forward, by addressing these 7 steps, African nations can build robust and resilient food chains, value chains that contribute to improved food security and economic growth. Let's identify a set of strategic steps that will help African nations accelerate progress along this transformative pathway. And here are 10 critical steps to build a comprehensive and resilient national food value chain. Now, this is going to be somewhat redundant. Again, that's how I do the research. I will copy things from different sites and then later squeeze them, combine them. You can tell I'm kind of getting into the area where the research is a little bit raw for this chapter. Number 1, assessment and planning. Conduct a thorough assessment of current food production, distribution, and consumption patterns. Point 2, identify potential vulnerabilities and areas for improvement. And these are strategic steps. Okay, I don't know if I necessarily need to change this, maybe just the paragraph leading into it. Point number 2, infrastructure development. Invest in robust infrastructure for storage, transportation, and distribution of food products. These are instructions that should go directly to the diaspora. This is why we are coming home. Much of this was covered in the book, The Blackest Soil, Africa Can Feed the World, which is why that book has gained so much traction. Point 2, under infrastructure development, ensure that rural and urban areas have equal access to this infrastructure. Point 3, innovation and technology. Promote the adoption of modern agricultural techniques and technologies such as drones, satellite imaging, and soil microbiome management. Okay, good. Hey, we're on a roll. Let's keep going. Number 4, diversification. Encourage the diversification of crops and livestock to reduce dependency on a single food source. Very important. Let me correct this. Okay. And point 2, support small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, in the food sector. Point 5, supply chain integration. Point 5A, facilitate the integration of different stakeholders in the food value chain from farmers to consumers. And the second point, implement systems for better communication and coordination among these stakeholders. Next, 6, regulatory framework. Point 1, establish and enforce regulations that ensure food safety, quality, and sustainability. And point two, streamline procedures and reduce bureaucratic barriers for food producers and processors. Number seven, education and training. Provide training programs for farmers and other stakeholders on best practices in agriculture and food processing, and for farmers, technicians, and other stakeholders. Second point, raise awareness about the importance of food security and sustainable practices among the general public. Number eight of this list of priorities, market access. Point one, enhance access to local, regional, and international markets for food producers and aggregators. And point two, implement policies that support fair trade and reduce trade barriers. Very important. Number nine of these 10 key infrastructure changes, risk management. Develop and implement strategies for managing risks such as natural disasters, pests, and market fluctuations. And Africa needs insurance programs for these natural disasters, pests, outbreaks, and market fluctuation. Second point under risk management, establish safety nets and insurance schemes for farmers and other vulnerable groups. And I guess I could just take that word, that insurance that I just added to the previous point, and just remove that. And number 10, key points, monitoring and evaluation. Point one, set up schemes, set up systems, not schemes, for continuous monitoring and evaluation of the food value chain. And second, use data-driven approaches to identify issues and make informed decisions for improvement. And in that first point, set up systems, this is where blockchain implementation will be quite valuable. And we're serious about this, people. We keep talking about blockchain. I wrote blockchain, it should be blockchain. We keep talking about the critical importance of blockchain when it comes to cryptocurrency, but when it comes to managing the whole of economic development, sustainable economic development, we seem to kind of miss that side of the story. These steps, these 10 critical steps, these 10 tactical steps will help to ensure that the national food value chain is comprehensive, resilient, and capable of adapting to changing conditions. So I would say from national to continental, and not the, but multiple continental value chains are comprehensive, resilient, and capable of adapting to changing conditions. So all of that is under the chapter of economic development. So I guess I could write in summary. Let's just put ... right now and finish that after the program today. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. We've come a long way along this course of study for this book, this upcoming book that I am very excited about. This will be number 56, believe it or not, to come out from your brother. 56 books in my catalog. Pretty amazing. It is. I'm on a roll. I wish I had the freedom to do this just full time, to be compensated, to just be an academic, a scholar, a think tank contributor, as well as a leader and a teacher of scholarship. If done right, in 2 years, I anticipate and plan to be an adjunct professor for as many as 5 different universities on the motherland continent. It's a beautiful vision, a beautiful dream for which I am training myself immensely to be able to be extremely competent in such a role. But like so many other brothers and sisters trapped in the belly of a nation that has consumed our hearts in many instances, we're trapped in a circle of impoverishment. For many people, they can't even do what I do because they're so desperate. We can do better than that if we all pull together, if we all take primary responsibility. And I'm going to put up a link. And by tomorrow, I'll talk about the link, or maybe I'll put it up in the not in the comment section, but in the the comment section to follow today's broadcast, to where you can now pre-order the book, because the book is just literally days away from going to the printer. The book is entitled, let me pull up the title again. I have it here on my desktop. The book is entitled The African Future: Empowering a United and Prosperous Africa for Future Generations. That's what it's about. I thank you all for allowing me the time to be with you to talk about what is important to me. I would like to think that this is quite important to many more people out there. Let me just close out saying greetings to you all. And thank you for tuning in today. Just double checking, did anybody have anything they wanted to say? Nobody talking to me. And the audience did shrink, so I guess maybe overstepped people's passion and interest on this subject. Nobody else, other than one other person, hit the like button for today's broadcast. That's on the Rumble family. So I don't think I'm wrong. I don't think we're wrong to look over the horizon and ask the question, what is the future for over 1 billion people of African heritage around the world? Let me just real quickly remind you what team you are on should you choose to become a true team player. I've saved the document. I'm going to find billions, global population, find global population. And this is a chapter called Estimating the Global Population of African Heritage. Let me just show you what I wrote. As the day I write this, February 11, 2025, my calculations put the global population of African descended at over 1.783 billion, 1.784 billion, or 21.85% of the world population of over 8.163 billion people. That's quite substantial. That's in this book. No one has ever done this before. I assure you. Otherwise, I would have found their work and streamlined what I had to discover and put together on this. The AI search engines cannot be relied upon to do this. I estimated figures for people on the African continent, 55 nations, 1.536 billion. For Brazil, the Quilombo descended and African mestizo mixed population. Latin American Afro-Latinos. For Afri-Amers in the US and Canada. For the CARICOM basin of 28 different nations. The United Kingdom, European Union, India, Western Asia, so-called Arab nations, Pakistan, Australo-Melanesian people, these 11 categories of people of African heritage. I went and I took days and days and days to find out who was there. Just getting a number for the Africans in the global diaspora outside the continent of 247,077,944, that itself could not find that number anywhere. So this book is primary research. This book is groundbreaking research. This book resets everything we thought we knew about who we are on this planet. It shouldn't be so hard for me to convince people to help with this. Just buy one book. Go to keidi.biz, KEIDI.biz. Just 5 people, including you, buy one book from keidi.biz, from the Conscious Rasta Press. Go to Amazon. You're going to see probably close to 50 books listed on my Amazon page. In Kindle, in Amazon, you can buy it from your territory. If you're in Canada, UK, European Union, if you're in Japan, Australia, you can buy it on your local Amazon affiliate. You won't have to pay the shipping costs from the US. What's in your hands? Said Adam Clayton Powell. What is in your hands? What do you already possess that you can use to transform yourself, your community, your family, and the world? What's in your hands? It's time to stop the lamenting, stop the foolishness. And as I confirmed with another conversation I had with one of my colleagues who will remain unnamed, because he and I have conversations everyone would love to hear, but the people who we don't want to hear the conversation, we don't want them to hear it. So we have to keep our conversations. But to confirm that we have these parasites out here. We talk about these parasites. Some of them, these preacher parasites, these bishop parasites. We have these parasites in the mass media, the compradors, as John Henry Clark called them, who sell us out to get themselves just another gold chain around their neck and a ring on their finger, and get invited to the club where they can sip tea or champagne with their pinky held out. Petty bourgeoisie gratification. We got a whole bunch of these compradors, compromising organizations and agencies selling us out. That's why we have not progressed any further than we have. We're being sold out. People selling us out to the birth control structures, selling us out to the military industrial complex, selling us out. We're going to have to overcome that. We're going to overcome it not through passivity. Passivity means they win by default. We're not asking you to sacrifice your life. We're asking you to invest some time, effort, energy, and a little bit of your labor-earned dollars. Join us. You can go to LIB Radio, LIB TV, livinginblack.com. Go scroll to the bottom of the page. And right now, without hesitation, you can make a donation. A little bit goes a long way, especially when a lot of us do a little bit, so that the majority of us can be primary beneficiaries of what it is that all of us really, truly do need. You've been listening to your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. We are LIB Radio, LIB TV. We are livinginblack.com. Peace and prosperity to each and every one of you. We'll be talking to you again tomorrow for our early edition of the Conscious Rasta Report. Thank you all for your support, for believing in this common destiny. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe yo.